Hey guys, welcome back to Ollie's Zoo, and we're here with part 2 of our reptile diseases series, or mini-series, as part of Ollie's Zoo. In the last part of the series we looked at various lizard diseases and conditions. This episode is going to be all about snakes, and some of the most sort of common occurring conditions and diseases that you'll find within the hobby today that affect our snaky, scaly friends. Of course, we're here with Alfred, our big boy, our oldest male royal python at Ollie's Zoo, who's 5 years old, and touch wood, he's a healthy specimen, not suffering from any of the ailments I'll be mentioning today. So yeah, let's get right into it. One of the most common problems that you'll see with snakes, particularly the tropical sort of species of snakes like pythons, boa constrictors, that type of thing, is at stomasis, or mouth rot, as its sort of common layman's term is. And it's a fungal infection, fungal condition that sort of manifests itself around the face, in the mouth. It usually starts in the mouth and then spreads to the outside of the face, and sort of causes complications with eating and breathing, that type of thing. And it's generally brought on by incorrect humidity conditions within the tank, poor hygiene, and then you'll start to get sort of like algae growth and things like that in your tank, and the spores of that can manifest themselves onto your snake, and can start to cause mouth rot, can start to cause deterioration of the face. If left untreated, it can be fatal, because in the case of pythons and boas, their face, their nasal cavities obviously are very important for breathing, that type of thing. So if they're becoming infected and clogged up with stomasis, then it's going to be bad for these guys. So stomasis is the first disease. Watch out for that one, guys. The next condition that we're going to be looking at is mites, and mites are the bane of every snake keeper's life, if you've ever had to deal with them anyway. Again, touch wood, I've not had any in my collection, but I have worked I have seen mites in collections that I've worked in. And they're a little type of parasite that manifest themselves onto snakes, hiding the scales, hiding the substrate. It's like with cat fleas, dog fleas, that type of thing. With snakes, various other reptiles, you get what are called mites. Nobody really knows where mites came from, but they've been in the hobby just about as long as royal pythons have been in the hobby, which is the 80s. So it's more than likely that first sort of shipment that came from Central Africa, wild caught royal pythons, one of them must have been carrying parasites, and of course they've multiplied by the millions in various collections throughout this country. The problem with mites is, with them being a parasite, they thrive under warm conditions, and of course you're not going to get much warmer than a vivarium, so they'll multiply like crazy. And there is some really good treatments out there, mite eradicators, if you will, that can cleanse your vivarium of mites. But the mites themselves, they'll latch themselves onto the snakes, and they'll start, like any parasite, they're going to feed off the host, and it can drastically reduce the health of your animal, and in extreme cases it can lead to death. So with mites, you want to try and catch them early, and they're quite distinctive little things. They're like tiny little pinheads, black pinheads, like tiny little termites that run along the surface of your snake's body. And like I said, there is some really good mite treatments out there, but of course you want to try and avoid them in the first place. So of course this means making sure where you're sourcing your potential pet snake from doesn't have a history of mites. Now of course, whether it be a pet shop or a private breeder or a wholesale breeder, they're going to be, some of them might be a bit nervous sharing that information with you about mites. So of course, if that is the case, it might be something to consider thinking about if they're not willing to tell you if said snake has had mites. If it's not had mites, then there might be something to hide. You know, so just be careful where you're sourcing your snakes from. You know, hopefully you won't end up with mites. So yeah, mites. The next condition that I want to talk about is IBD, or inclusion body disease, is its full name, and this is one that's not really as highlighted as well in the hobby as I think it should be. But it is a disease that is just as deadly as any other that you're going to come across in snakes. It mainly affects boa constrictors, Burmese pythons, retics. There have been cases of it occurring in smaller pythons like your royal pythons. And it's not really a well understood disease as this. There's various theories about it. A few studies have been done by scientists to determine what causes it, but in a nutshell, it's sort of like as close as you're going to get to a snake stroke, as you will with snakes, where inclusion body disease, it's sort of like something triggers it inside of the brain, and it causes the whole snake's body to immobilise, and it has a stroke, and you know, they usually die from it. You know, and boa constrictors, both Burmese pythons, those snakes that I mentioned before, they all carry inclusion body disease. You know, just like any animal has the you know, potential to have a stroke, or the risk, I should say, to have a stroke. These guys, they all carry it. You know, so it's just a question of you know, if you're unlucky enough for it to happen to your snake, that type of thing. There's no way to really sort of diagnose it or predict it. It's a question of genetics. Of course, if your snake has come from, you know, another snake that has had inclusion body disease or died from inclusion body disease, I would suspect that might increase your likelihood of the snake, you know, being sort of, you know, attacked by inclusion body disease. But it's a dreadful disease. I've seen it firsthand, what it can do to snakes, and it's not pretty. You know, and I won't wish it on any snake owner because it's absolutely horrific. So yeah, watch out for inclusion body disease. One symptom, one sort of telltale sign, it's not really helpful because a lot of snakes do this, but one telltale sign that they might have inclusion body disease is stargazing, is the layman's term, which is where boas in particular do this, where they'll just sort of like they'll just sort of sit in the tank with their head raised up like that, and they'll just stare into open space for hours upon end. You know, so if you were seeing a lot of that, it might be worth to take your snake down to the vets to get checked out. You know, some blood tests might indicate that it's at risk of inclusion body disease, something like that. So yeah, inclusion body disease. The last disease that I want to talk about today is RI, or respiratory infection. This is kind of like a chest infection, you know, like people get, but in snakes, you know, the proper term is respiratory infection. And the sort of symptoms that you'll have if you have a cold, you know, like a sore throat, a wheezy cough, that type of thing, you know, runny nose, that type of thing. Very similar in snakes, really, if they have respiratory infection. Early signs to spot for this is that the breathing will be quite laboured, heavy breathing, wheezy breathing, that type of thing. Eventually they will start to get some you know, quite unpleasant discharge out of their nasal cavities, and of course this is another sort of sign of respiratory infection. And of course it can actually link to stomasis, which is what we were talking about before, the whole mouth rot thing. This can be sort of like a precursor to that condition. But respiratory infection, it stems from extreme temperatures inside of a vivarium or a rub. You know, where again you can have quite fluctuant temperatures inside of a rub, which is why it's important to make sure that your heating apparatus is on a thermostat. And then when you turn it off at night time, you know, the temperatures aren't dropping too drastically; they're going to stay steady. You know, because obviously reptiles, they need you know, a fairly constant temperature to sort of regulate the body temperature. Fluctuant temperatures, up, down, up, down, up, down, that's going to cause problems. You know, and it's like with people, you know, we tend to get chest infections in winter. autumn time when the temperatures are starting to drop, and then a drastic drop, and then that could trigger, you know, a chest infection. And of course, in the case of snakes, that can be respiratory infection. You know, so there's various treatments for this condition. I wouldn't try and attempt to sort of cure it yourself unless you know you're clever that way. My advice would be just to get your snake to a vet, have it be prescribed some really strong antibiotics, you know, and that should clear up the RI, no problem right there. So yeah, so that's going to do it for today, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video, you know, and learned a thing or two about snake diseases. You know, this is something that should be, I think, made more aware of for reptile keepers, of snake diseases, because snakes are the most sort of like, you know, they don't give a lot away in their emotions. You know what I mean? So I think people should be made more aware of snake diseases, to watch out for them so that our little friends don't become ill. So yeah, watch out for the next video, which will hopefully be about tortoise diseases. It'd be awesome if you could give this video a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Enjoy your day, guys. Bye.